Welcome to another episode of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. My special guest this week is Mark Pauline. Mark, could you tell us about yourself?
Yeah. I guess for the purposes of this show, I have a company, Survival Research Labs, that I started 46 years ago. And I came out here to California and saw there was all this excess technology laying around and decided that it would be good to put it to different purposes. And so I formed a company, Survival Research Labs, and that's what I've been doing. We do shows with machines and robots and use commercial, industrial, military technologies to tell stories.
Yes, and that entails a lot of tools. So I know that you have some great stuff for us. Tell us about one of your favorite tools that you really be loath to lose if it were missing.
Well, I think that probably just in terms of dollar replacement to ever find another one, it would be the DMU-50V, which is like a 5-axis German CNC machine.
Okay.
So that's, it came out of NASA originally, and then it was at the Link Observatory machine shop, and they had a guy who could operate it, but he quit or got fired, and the scientists there thought they could operate it, but they couldn't really read the manual. They're very difficult to operate.
Are there a lot of them made? Is this a common?
Oh yeah, it's the premier. DMG is the main manufacturer of 5-axis CNC machines, and so yeah, I mean they're just expensive. I mean the envelope is 20 by 20 by 20 inches, and they cost $250,000. So
I see.
This one cost $250,000.
Even the used ones cost that much, or is that the?
Pardon me?
Do they cost that much used as well?
Used, they're about 60 or 70,000, maybe 100 used, depending on the condition.
And what do you have to feed it? Do your normal, kind of something that AutoCAD would generate, or Fusion?
You create 3D objects, and you just basically, you have to. That's the easy part, and then you have to change. You have to convert the actual information in the 3D part into a language that the machine understands, which is called G code. And then basically it just makes the part. And it's very accurate. It has like temperature compensation, sag compensation. It's has glass scales on all the axes. So you could make, for instance, things like nuclear weapons with it. There's actually a database the government keeps on these machines so that they're not allowed to leave the country. Basically they're ITAR regulated devices.
Wow.
And accurate in volumetric space. They're very accurate to within about a 10,000th of an inch.
And what kinds of
things? You can make really great parts on it. It's just amazing. All modern high-tech parts are made on 5-axis machines pretty much.
I see. And what kind of things do you make with it?
Well, I make just crazy parts for machines. Basically, you just clamp something once and you can machine it from 5 sides. So that's very good for prototype work, which is the kind of stuff we do. We're not doing like long production runs. I mean, the longest production runs for a machine I make is probably what I'm doing now. Is it's like 130 parts. So
I see. So you can do it.
So for something like this, normally, if you made it on another kind of machine, like a standard CNC 3 or 4-axis machine, you'd have to build fixtures for everything and then move it around. In this case, you don't need to build any fixtures. You just basically put it in there and tell the machine where it is, and it just figures it out for you.
Okay, that's cool. And say the name of it one more time.
It's a Deckel Maho, or DMG, Deckel Maho Gildemeister, DMG. DMU-50V, and I sent a link to a picture of one in that thing I sent you.
Right. And how big would it be, just as a rough approximation for listeners?
The machine is about 10 feet long and 7 feet wide and 9 feet tall.
It's not very portable.
No, not really. It weighs like 11,000 pounds. But
So you
that's
have
a
to,
smaller, one of our smaller CNC
okay.
actually.
So, so Mark, what would be a second favorite cool tool for you?
Well, the second favorite, I think, is this manual machine I got a couple of years ago. It's a Japanese lathe made in 1965. The one I got actually sat in a warehouse for 35 years after it was purchased. So it's almost new, which is very rare for these machines. It was one of the most expensive and most complicated manual lathes ever made. It's a 25, 16-inch lathe, but it's just, they really put every possible feature they could in this thing. It's just a lot of really advanced mechanical features that make it just a pleasure to use. It's just kind of unbelievable machine. I also made a link to that, I believe. But it's just a great machine. This one's basically new. It's incredibly accurate, tool room lathe, and it's weighs like 7,000 pounds, but it's, you can really remove material, but it's also extremely precise.
I
And
see.
it's just, it's like a sewing machine. It's like really smooth. It has features that isolate the vibration from the spindle at high RPM, so you can get really mirror finishes on things, which is not possible with regular lathes that don't have that feature.
And how much would used ones of those go for?
New, I think about $70,000 in
And used, how
1965.
about used?
Used now,
Yeah,
in the condition I got it in, probably about 5 or 6 in this condition. I got it for free. It was given to me. A lot of stuff is donated to SRL like that.
uh, but if
So
someone wanted to go out looking for one, they should expect to maybe to pay $6,000 or $7,000 for it.
probably would spend years looking for one. Very few of them ever came into the United States because they were priced very high. The pricing was much higher than American lathes at the time.
I see.
So they have very few of them. They really just came into probably, Fortune 500 companies or research laboratories,
I
pretty
see.
much.
I see. And are they very common in Japan?
Yeah, you can look online. You can see people selling them mostly are in Japan.
Okay.
South Korea took the license to build it in the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay. And say that name one more time.
The name of the machine,
The name of the machine. Yeah.
Ikegai A-20.
Okay. Ikegai A-20. So this is sort of a state-of-the-art lathe and milling machine.
Well, it's just a lathe,
Just a
but
lathe.
it's just amazing to use. It's just one of those things. It's so perfect in its execution that it's just one of those machines that's just unbelievable to use. It's like every time you touch it, it's like a privilege to use
So
it.
why wasn't the general design replicated in the States somehow, or sold in this, if it's so superior,
Well,
why is it so
it's a
rare?
very expensive way to make a machine. It's like, it's not practical. They don't make manual machines really much anymore, except maybe in Taiwan or South Korea,
For
uh,
China?
China, poor quality ones in
Uh-huh.
China. But the real high quality ones, the only place you can get them anymore is pretty much Taiwan and Eastern Europe and South Korea.
I see. Okay.
They're very, very expensive now. They're in the still 70 or $80,000 new.
New. Okay. So so Mark, how about a third cool tool that
A third cool tool. Let's see. I think that I put it down. The third really cool tool was this Bridgeport EZ Path SD lathe, which is a CNC lathe that'll turn objects 27 inches in diameter and 45 inches long. So you could turn a several ton piece of steel on it. But just an amazing machine, really it's a 10,000-pound lathe. It's typically these lathes are called oil field lathes. They're made for machining heavy steel parts. And this one was in really perfect condition, and I got it very cheap, so it's another reason I like it. But it's it's basically it's made in Brazil, but all fitted up in the United States by Bridgeport in the East, where they're based at Bridgeport, Connecticut, I guess.
So this is another lathe. So why, and this lathe is better than the lathe you just mentioned from Japan because
it has a computer attached to it, so you can program it.
I see. Okay.
And then the main interest for me is that I can make really large diameter parts, and it's very accurate and very nice control, very simple control. And just a few of the features make it really desirable. Like all the memory is in NVRAM, so you can't ever lose the parameters, and it has a bunch of cool features that a lot of things don't have.
Okay.
It's very well integrated, which is important for those kind of more modern tools. The computer and the PLC programming is all done the right way. They're very sought after still.
And this is also another very large lathe, large and heavy.
Yeah, it's about 13 feet long and about 7 feet deep. It weighs 11,000 pounds.
Okay. So how many lathes do you have in your shop?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one hard-hinge lathe, which is a very small, precise lathe, HLV, hard-hinge HLV. And I have a Cadillac lathe, which is about the same size as the Ikegai, but not quite as precise, but also Taiwanese and fairly late model, made in 1997, which is recent for a manual lathe. And I have the CNC lathe, and I have the Ikegai. So that's for this type of prototype shop that we have here, that's kind of the minimum what you would need. This is basically, it's my goal always is to replicate what you would find in a Fortune 500 prototype shop.
Right.
So my goal at the outset.
You have some favorite hand tools?
I don't really use hand tools much, but I mean, most everything's done on the computer, computerized, assemble things, just basic hand tools. I have a lot of them. I have so many of them, I don't know, thousands of pounds of them, because we, I mean, the way we operate is there's just me here, maybe 1 or 2 other people, and there really isn't anyone here that knows how to use the CNC tools. We don't have anyone that knows how to do that. But when there's a crew here, when we're working on a show, there's like 30 or 40 people here at the shop. So I have to have many multiples of drills, hand drills, and hammers, and every screwdrivers, every possible tool. So I just have a multitude of them. I guess that's my favorite thing about the hand tools. I just have so many of them.
Right.
So I never lose them. There always is one at hand.
Right.
So it's, my favorite. That's my favorite thing about them is there's a lot of them to choose from. You always have the right tool for the job. That's the best tool. The best tool is the right one, the perfect one for the job.
And you have lots of tools, in that respect, hand tools are not that expensive, so you can have multiples. Yeah,
I mean the real the real thing that force multiplier, I guess you could call it, on the West Coast is you can get these really, really unbelievably expensive and in perfect condition tools that I have been talking about for dirt cheap. It's very, very cheap. I mean, you really don't need much. You need some space. Preferably, you need to have some friends who have graduated from MIT, that can fix things, help you fix things if the tools break. That's a real plus.
What you're saying on the West Coast are cheap? What did you have in mind? I'm not really sure following that.
Well, because space is so valuable here, like for instance, the 5-axis mill, the Link Observatory didn't know how to operate it. They couldn't understand, they couldn't perceive how to operate it. And so they didn't know if it even worked or not because they couldn't read the manual.
Right.
And so I heard about it and I said, well, I'll take that away for you. So I got it for basically scrap value. But I got it back here. It's in perfect condition. I think I've had it for 7 years, and I think my total repair cost has been about $1,200 in 7 years of use. So it's in very low miles. But that would never happen in any other part of the country. In any other part of the country, they would want to get 40 or 50,000 bucks for that thing.
I see.
You would ever let that go for nothing ever. And so it's just because space is at a premium, and nobody has time to mess around with big heavy things. They just need to get rid of it. I mean, another machine that I have in my list is another DMG machine, which is a big 4-axis machine, but that's it's a big, large envelope, 42 by 24 by 24 inch part can fit in there. But that machine was brand new when I got it. It had 200 hours on it. The brand new. I have their invoice. It was $150,000. I got it for $8,000 from this company that could not figure out. It has a German control on it. It's one of the hardest ones to operate, and they couldn't understand. They had a guy trained to operate it, and he left, and it literally sat for 20 years. They bought it brand new in 2000. It sat for 20 years, and I got it 20 years later. It had not been used for 20 years.
Right.
But and they just needed space in their warehouse.
I see. Okay. All right.
So, I mean, that's the thing. That's the only reason I could even have a company like Survival Research Labs is just because technology is just everywhere up here, and it's really cheap.
Yeah. So do you have like a plasma cutter? Do you have
I have a plasma cutter. I have all that stuff. I have basically every possible tool you could imagine. Any tool you ask me, I don't have a laser cutter. But then, I don't really have, I have more industrial tools. I don't really have like maker space tools here. Those aren't really relevant to what we do here.
Right. But you would have a water jet cutter, you'd have a plasma cutter.
I don't have a water jet cutter. Just because of space. No, they take up a lot of space, and they take up a lot of they're really expensive to operate. It's not, and I have a friend, one of my best friends has one. So whenever I need to get something made, I just bring it over to him, and he does it for free. So
yeah,
he has a really nice one.
Right. So what's your fourth tool then?
Let's see. I think the fourth tool was the DMC 103V, which was the 4th-axis one. I think that was. Let's see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's the 4th one. Another big CNC machine that I just was describing a little while ago. And that one's really nice just because it's new. I mean, it's just amazing to have a machine that's that well made and that perfect, but it's new, I mean, it takes essentially, before anything ever goes wrong with these machines, they're all made to very high level ISO 9000 specifications. And so it takes usually 10 or 20,000 hours of use before they start to have failures that really need any kind of repair.
Wow.
And so that's far past my lifetime. I think since I got it in 2019, I think I've put 700 or 800 hours on it.
Right. If there was somebody who was starting out, a young person, had a shop, maybe they wanted to do prototyping, they had no money, what would you suggest that they look for? What lathe would they?
Well, I would suggest that they move to Northern California, because this is their tool. There's no place on
Earth where let's say they live in the Bay Area, and so what should they look for?
Well, it depends on what they want to do. I mean, there's the problem with owning tools. Most of what I see, the problem is lots of people think they get a bunch of them, and then they have no idea what they're going to do with them. They don't have any imagination. You have to have an imagination before you have the tool. So that's what I would say to people. So make sure you have something. Make sure you have the kind of imagination that can use a a higher level tool. Otherwise, you might as well just be a painter or something, you know, or you might as well like carve marble or something.
So there's this young guy and his partner, and they have a project that they want to work on that requires a lathe. What would you suggest that they look for?
Well, I would suggest getting, if you can get a hard-hinge lathe.
A what lathe?
A hard-hinge lathe. Yeah, I mean, that's the best you
can get. A brand or a type?
Yeah, I mean, if money isn't an object, I would get a hard-hinge. Hard-hinge is a brand.
Right. What if money was an object? What if they didn't have very much money? What would you suggest? What should they look for?
Well, I would recognize, just look around on Craigslist and then lowball people. I mean, I do that all the time. You know, I just tell people I'll give them like 10% of what they're trying to get for. Most people, the fact of the matter is, most people on Craigslist are just trying to get rid of stuff. They don't care how much they get for it. You know, I mean, there's always the people who are like, I'd rather burn it than sell it for that much. But then there's people who just are like, okay, get it out of here. And those are the people you want to look for. You want to find that type of seller. And then you want to find a lathe that's of a higher quality. Like Japanese lathes are always higher quality. Never, ever, ever buy a Chinese lathe, because they never work. They never work. You'll always just be wasting your time if you own one. They're made poorly. The castings are terrible. You'll never be able to cut a straight part. It's never going to have any rigidity, just pure junk. So that's the first thing, is exclusion. You want to exclude that. You have to know the difference between a Chinese lathe and a regular lathe. And then I would say, from the top down, you want to go for Japanese lathes. And I would say from then Eastern European lathes with like Palamco or various companies like that. And then American lathes. The problem with American lathes is they're usually really worn to shit. So you have to be able to look at one and tell, if you're not an engineer already, and if you're not really a smart engineer, you're not going to be able to look at a machine and tell if it's no good or not. You really need to find somebody, a wing person who has that knowledge, who will go with you to look at it. I mean, I've seen people, a friend of mine who was a machinist. He went and bought a lathe that looked really good in the outside. It was all painted and everything like that. He got it, and they had taken, and the screw for going in and out for the carriage, the screw felt really tight. Well, after the guy used it for a couple months, it got really loose. He took it apart, and they had just poured lead in there, molten lead in there, because the screw was so worn out. They poured molten lead in between the screw and the nut, and it just disintegrated after a week or two. But there's people that do stuff like that, You've got to know the difference between something with normal wear and something that's unrecoverably worn out. So that's the other thing. So that's, American lathes are great, but you have to, and you can sometimes find out here, you can find them with very low use, because there's never been any real manufacturing in Northern California for decades. And so you can find machines that people have bought that like got used like in a repair shop for a little while, and they're like just about new. And so that's what you need to do. You need to find that. But that's my suggestions: Japanese lathe, Eastern European, and if you can get someone to go with you, look at an American lathe. But always you want to have someone who knows how to assess the condition of a machine tool. Unless you know how to do it yourself, you really got to get someone that knows how to do it.
So if you were to find a Japanese lathe, kind of a starter lathe, what's the ballpark that you would hope you could bargain to?
Well, you should be able to get a really high quality, medium size engine lathe for $1,000 in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Maybe less, maybe 700,
And you just have
you'll also be able to find, there are also people who would just give them away. It's not uncommon.
Right. Just to get rid of it.
Yeah, just to get it out of there.
Yeah.
Look on Craigslist, look on Facebook Marketplace. Those are the places you'll find them. Facebook Marketplace is a little bit people are a little bit more know what they're doing on there. Craigslist is really where the dregs of people, the dregs of sales, people just, anybody on Craigslist is trying to get rid of it. They don't care.
Yeah.
No serious people. Anybody who's serious about selling machine tools sells them on eBay.
I see. Okay. Is eBay worth looking at for that reason or not?
No, it's not, because people are always trying to get top dollar. And people know exactly what it's worth, and they'll get exactly, someone will pay exactly what it's worth, and
Yeah.
no one will ever, you will never get a deal from anybody on eBay.
I see. Okay.
Plus, you have to ship it. Anytime you have to ship a machine tool, you might as well just throw your money out the car window on the freeway.
Right.
Never ever buy anything that you can't look at ever.
Right.
Never.
And how do you transport a lathe? Since we're getting into the nitty gritty here, do you?
You can rent a flatbed from U-Haul for about $175-$100 a day, and you had a mileage charge, but Bay Area, it's really cheap. If you don't ever want to, you have to have a forklift to move them, but renting forklifts is just a phone call. You just say, hey, I need this forklift here, and just tell them you know how to drive it.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to drive it, then don't ever move a forklift without someone who knows how to move heavy equipment, or you'll just wreck the forklift. I mean, you'll just wreck the lathe.
Yeah.
So
this is all great advice, Mark. Thank you for this. In the few minutes we have remaining, what's your current project or passion that you'd like to share? What are you up to?
Well, what I'm doing right now is we kind of turned from a thing that I supported, and we've been supported by a couple of very people who are really lovers of SRL, who have a lot of money. So they've been supporting us for the last couple of years. So I don't really have to work. So I just have been working full time on SRL stuff. We're trying to find a location right now. We've been trying for a year and a half. Unfortunately, my reputation precedes me, and so now people say Mark Pauline or Research Laboratories. They go online, they find 10,000 batshit crazy things that you've done or seen. It's all there. Just like your parents told you, if you're young enough, be careful what you put on the web because it'll never go away. Well, we kind of have got since we've started our first website in 1992, we've accumulated a lot of successful promotional stuff, but very negative in terms of getting people to let you use their property for a show. So that's a problem. We haven't had much luck talking people into letting us use their property, but I've been rebuilding older machines. I've been finishing up one of the most complicated machine I've ever made, which is the Predator arm, which is a machine that uses a couple of Intel RealSense 3D mapping cameras to analyze what people are doing in front of it, plot out an attack. We've got like an AI, very, very simple AI program that plots out an attack and decides who's the victim. And then, as a cascade of algorithms, it goes through and it chooses a victim, and then it tracks that victim and tries to kill them. And so it fires out an arm, the Predator arm, out at I've got a poppet valve thing I invented that fires out this 50-pound arm, accelerates it from stationary to 70 miles an hour in about a millisecond.
Wow.
A lot of energy. It's got the energy of 600 psi, 1 cubic liter of gas at 600 psi, whatever that amount of energy is.
That's a lot. 600 psi is crazy. It's crazy high.
Yeah, so that smashes into a bulletproof enclosure in front of it, and it waits until you turn your face or something, or even if you blink. We've got a couple of different algorithms that it can wait for to decide if you start talking to somebody else after it's tracked you for a certain time. It just fires somewhere between your face and your knees, and your in a 120-degree cone in front of the machine. So that's we're we're doing a little bit more work on the software, but it works pretty good now. I mean, it's robust. I mean, we fired it about 70 or 80 times into this Lexan sheet in the enclosure, and there's no sign of wear yet at all. You know, it's got Teflon fingertips, so it doesn't mar the Lexan. And
wow, that's really cool.
pretty interesting. It would kill you if it wasn't enclosed. It would kill you instantly. So, you know, I mean, when I talked to the client, who's a CEO of one of the big tech companies, one of the biggest tech companies in the Bay Area, I said, I want to make a machine. He goes, I want to buy one of your machines. I said, okay, I'll make a machine that tries to kill people, you know, hunts people and tries to kill them. He goes, it's a great idea. So yeah, so that's been, I probably put about 3,000 or 4,000 hours of time into that.
Wow. Well,
it was a perfect project to go spend a lot of time on during COVID.
Yeah.
I spent thousands of hours in here working on it.
And does it have a name? Does your predatory robot?
It's just a predator arm.
Predator arm. Okay.
Yeah, the name for all these machines is very perfunctory, so
yeah,
it goes along with the tradition. But that's a good one. Right now, I'm putting. There's a machine called the screw machine that runs on these big steel screws that actually made in the 80s, but I rebuilt that. And then the problem is it runs on these screws with wheels on the perimeter, like an Omni wheel. But the problem is that it hammers the concrete or any surface it's on. So my solution is to double the wheel count by putting wheels in between the other wheels on the back side of the screw. So I made 134 3-inch diameter steel wheels, and the other parts that are required, I have to weld them onto the spiral, the screw spiral. So that's what I'm doing just today. You know, I'm finishing up. I have like 30 more left.
Wow. I look forward to that. I hope that you find a property to run your show on and let everybody know. I'd love to see it.
We'll find some suckers someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what we really need is we need like an arts. We used to have arts institutions that would help us do that. And now they don't really want to hear about it anymore. So we're kind of on our own looking for it. And, you know, that makes it a little bit less.
And you can't do it at Burning Man? Burning Man doesn't work? You can't do it at Burning Man?
They would never allow us out there.
Oh, really?
No. Most of the machines I have here violate the rules for what you're allowed to have out there.
I see.
And so I would be able to only do SRL light out there, and I don't really do that. So
okay.
Plus, it's just too hippy dippy for me. I'm really not. I mean, I went to like pop festivals and when I was a teenager, you know, and I don't really need to go to those kind of things anymore. I think I still have acid flashbacks for those kind of events.
Well, I hope that you do find a grounds to run your show on, and let us know. Thank you for taking time and sharing your tools with tools with everyone. We really appreciate it. We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's 1 page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1 M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they're also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We'll respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. We give thanks to this week's patrons, who include Phil King, John Wood, Matthew Robbins, Spike Yakwa, Dave, Sean Hartley, David Long, Matt Gromes, David Bouquet, Les Howard, and Adam Bristol. Thank you, each one, for your support. We appreciate it.